How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the bonus edition episode of the Couch GMs podcast, where we are recapping week 7 and the Couch GMs World Cup. Shout out to all the Philly fans. I know you're going through it right now as they just lost the NLCS, but you did get Kevin Byard in a trade from the Tennessee Titans. So good and bad both this week for the Philadelphia fans. And if you're wondering why I'm shouting those out, because there are local teams, not my favorite team, Georgia's favorite team, as you guys know. But you're here to hear the recap of week 7 of the Couch GMs World Cup. So why don't we jump right into our World Cup recap? Alrighty, and this is where I remind you, if you want to follow along with the scores and stats and standings, head over to the Couch GMs YouTube page and you can check all that out. I'm going to throw it up on the screen and we'll go ahead and get started here as I add. Oh, wrong button. There we go. A little bit bigger for everybody. Heck, we'll even go that way. We'll change it up this week. Um, World Cup is going strong. We are the halfway point of the fantasy football regular season. So still a lot of games left, a lot of moves to be made. This is prime trade season, making things happen. And we're going to start as we typically do in Group A. The standings are on the screen. You see the Memphis Pharaohs at number 1, sitting at 5-2, also tied with Chaos Reigns at 5-2. Ashley Madison, that's Chunky, and I Kirk, my cousins, is 3 through 5 at 4-3. Kempy is at 6 at 4-3. Then 7 is the Black Sheep at 3-4. Tyler all the way down to 8, 2-5. We got to help him out, get him back rolling. Colin is 2-5 at 9, and then Urban Warfare is 2-5 as well. So a lot of positional changes can happen over the next week with these records so close. I mean, really, first, there's only 3 games back, but you're here to talk about what happened in week 7. We are in week 7. I'm pretty sure we're in week 7. Yeah, that's what the sum equals. Got a little nervous there. Heading back to week 7, we'll start with Tyler's match where, again, he just can't seem to catch a break as Andrew beats him 161.58 to 112.16. And as always, here we take a look at the lineup, see what could have gone different when you lose by 40. Not much could have gone different, but he had Lamar Jackson go for 33. Deontay Foreman broke out, if you can even call it a breakout, but had his 3 touchdown performance, had over 31 points. A.J. Brown went off on Sunday Night Football with 24 points. And Jared Goff, that high-powered Lions offense, just struggled with a loss 38-6 to the Baltimore Ravens, getting less than 10. But if you did check out George's TikTok last week, he actually said sit Jared Goff because of this crazy road versus home split. He was only averaging 13 points on the road heading into that matchup, and that went down as he only put up 9.36 points. Calvin Ridley continues to disappear in games, only putting up 1 point. Cole Kmet, despite the Bears putting up 38, he put up a goose egg. Christian McCaffrey, he played. It was kind of a surprise, but he still put up his 21 points, and Jordan Addison had a breakout game. So you're looking at Tyler's team. He has some pieces that he can bounce back on. Did he have anyone go off on the bench? No, his bench definitely struggled, but he has Debo, Burrow on bye. This was the first week with teams with 6 byes as well. Where Andrew, he has Cortland Sutton, who had a good week. Ramondre Stevenson had an okay week. So he had some points. So pretty easy win for Andrew in week 7 as he moved to 5-2, tied for second place. Moving on to the next matchup in Group 1, that is Sean at 4-3 with a 122.86 victory over Colin 119.64. We're talking 3.22 points is the difference in this one. Let's take a look at the lineups and see who could have made a difference. And looking at Colin's team off the bat, Christian Watson getting hurt, only putting up 4.2 points. The Packers continue to struggle on offense. That was a big loss at the wide receiver position. KJ Osborne, he didn't do, with Jordan Addison having a big day, he didn't score points. That's another guy under 10. On Sean's side, Jerry Jeudy, he had a disappointing performance, and so did Jahan Dotson. And Jalen Waddle, he did get a little bit banged up in the middle of the games. 9 points, not terrible. But let's take a look at these bench points. Does anyone go off on Colin's bench? Not really. As you can see, Colin had 4 people on bye. Like I mentioned, 6 on bye in week 7. Crazy starts to happen when a lot of teams were on buys. Uh, Rashad White could have him out. Like if you would have flexed him over KJ Osborne, he might have got the victory. Sean had Jackson Smith and Jigba. So even perfect lineups, the edge still probably goes to Sean. But Colin is 2-5, but showed he can score points, and you can't count him out in Group A just yet. The third matchup is Greg versus Kempy, and this we'll have to keep track of this, but this might go down as the closest matchup of the year in the Couch GMs World Cup, as Kempy gets a victory 98.56 to 98.32. Yes, they both start with 98. So a 0.56 to a 0.32. So 0.34 points is all it took. Any big misses down here? Alexander Madison only getting 5 points. That's a big loss. But Aaron Jones only got 7. So there was another disappointment. DJ Moore came back to earth with only 9 points. These look like very close matchups. The Browns defense getting 14 points despite giving up 38. I mean, that is an impressive performance. A lot of people on bye. Kempy only had 3 points on his bench, so there's not much else he could have played that would help him out. Najee Harris on the bench for Greg, as he could have played him over Madison, DeAndre Swift, which no one blames him for not playing him over DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson. The Raiders defense getting smoked by the Chicago Bears, and it looked like a good stream for the week, only getting 3 points. That's a tough one. One different move, and that becomes a victory. And these teams, Greg gets a game up. Now Kempy ties him 4-3. The good thing is in the Couch GMs World Cup, points 4 is the first tiebreaker. So despite the loss, Greg is still ranked the number 3 ranked team, where Kempy is the 6th ranked team, despite having the same record and just losing head to head. So that's something to keep in mind. If you were unsure about the tie-breaking scenarios for the Couch GMs World Cup, it goes points 4 and then head to head. And part of the reason is just because, reminder, this is a 4-year experience. So those points 4 will help determine who gets those final slots in the main Couch GMs World Cup in year 4. So follow along with us next couple seasons as well. This is just not a one and done thing. As we move on to the fourth matchup in Group A, Ryan gets a 122.06 to 93.56. Nick falls again, second week in a row where he gets a loss. Scrolling down here, Bijan Robinson. We didn't talk much about that at the top of the show, but that's an interesting one. The NFL is looking into that. Apparently, he was dealing with some headaches or illness right before the game, and they just wanted to keep it precaution, but it went unreported. So fantasy players couldn't pull him out of his lineup. Some bets definitely helped it, and that's why the NFL is looking into it. They have to report injuries, and that one didn't get reported properly, it seems, on the surface. We'll see if anything comes of that. But Bijan Robinson, it's probably not the only guy he let down in fantasy this week. And of course, we hope that he feels better, because no one wants a guy out there playing sick. But yeah, so a 30-point difference. We'll take a look at the bench, but probably not much you can do, especially with bye weeks. Kareem Hunt is on the bench, and that could be a big piece moving forward, as Jerome Ford is a little bit banged up. And he played Patrick Mahomes, who had a lights out day. So Patrick Mahomes had over 400 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, 33 points. And you still get the loss. That's a tough one. We'll see how many of those other games people had Patrick Mahomes that they took a loss. Here's the biggest biggest disparity. I'm doing quick math in my head. I might have lied. This is not the biggest. The first matchup was. It was close, though. As Andrew gets a victory, his second win in a row over Cameron, 116.86, excuse me, to 70.20 here. And we're going to scroll down one last time, take a look at these teams. And Geno Smith, not that, 14 points, basically. Not a terrible day, but average, middle of the tier quarterback. Mark Andrews, 2 receiving touchdowns. That was a big day at the tight end position. 20 points there compared to Evan Ingram only getting 7. Tight end. Not a lot of great things. Cam have anyone on his bench go off? No, not really. Kendrick Bourne, 13 points. Would have been better than both of his receivers, but who's playing Kendrick Bourne over Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, Drake London? So just a really unfortunate day, and that happens in fantasy football for Cam, as he unfortunately gets a loss and moves to 4-3, and he is in the 5 spot. So one last time, I'll go back here so you can see the league score if you're following along on YouTube. Just see where the teams stand halfway through the fantasy football regular season. Um, that'll be Group A. We're going to jump right into my group and Group B, and we'll start with their standings. Bree continues to dominate this group as she moves to 7-0. I'm sitting in second place at 5-2. Shelby is 4-3. Tua Infinity and Bijan is 4-3. So it looks like that's Reed. He got a victory despite the Bijan fiasco. The Fantasy Godfather, aka Marcus, he moves to 3-4. But interesting to note here, he's 3-4, but he's currently the league's highest scorer. So he's definitely a team to watch out. Neil in the Gridiron Academy, he lost this week, and we'll get to that in a second. 3-4. So a lot of teams, so 5 through 9 are 3-4 to finish that out. That's Hayden, Sheeler, Josh, and then unfortunately Aaron sitting down there at 0-7. But like I said, this is the halfway point. Things can turn around. He can make a trade, and he can get back to 7-7 and swipe into this. And he needs to start winning now. But with all these 3-4 teams, they're going to play each other. Bree is most likely going to take a loss at some point in this season. Maybe it's to Aaron. Maybe that's what kickstarts his game. We'll have to see if that comes to fruition as we move closer. But let's jump into the week 6, or excuse me, week 7. I don't know why I keep wanting to say week 7. And we'll start with myself, where I got the 125.8 victory over Neil, 113.76. And Neil, if you're listening, I did enjoy this victory with an untoasted Pop-Tart, just in case you were curious. That's more of an inside joke for us and the people that went when he was our professor. That's a cool story. Neil's a former professor of Tyler, George, and myself, and a couple of players in the league. And he'll love that one if he's checking out, and he may never listen again. We'll have to wait and see. But a big week, Alvin Kamara, he continues to put up points since he's come back. AJ Brown, Mark Andrews. So those are 3 names we talked about that had big weeks the last week. Jordan Love, he got me through this week thanks to a couple passing touchdowns at the end of the game when they started to score some points. Brandon Ayuk, it was a very close matchup. I know it does, 12 points might not seem like it, but I had Alexander Madison and Brandon Ayuk going into the game with a little bit of a lead, and he had Christian McCaffrey. So it could have gone either way, especially when Christian McCaffrey has been putting up points. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a good week. Darren Waller. So yeah, overall, these are good weeks. But again, Christian Watson, that's a guy that really has not been that guy that we saw at the end of last season. Now he's dealing with some injuries. He might have to replace that. But I will give credit to Neil. He always seems to have the wherewithal to play somebody that they're going to break out. He played Dave Montgomery in week 1. He played him again coming off the injury on the short week in Thursday Night Football. This week he played Jackson Smith and Jigba. If I scroll down, it might have something to do with buys. No, surprisingly, Neil didn't have anybody on bye, despite 6 being on bye. Still in it right. Did have Josh Downs on the bench, played him over Christian Watson. He might have made a difference. I had Rashee Rice. I played him over someone. Would have been close. Would have had to wait and see how that all broke down. Well, let's move on to the second matchup between Reed and Shelby. 2 teams at 4-3. Shelby, unfortunately, on a 2-game losing streak here. And like I mentioned, based on the name Tua Infinity and Bijan, maybe he doesn't have Bijan. I just thought he did based on his name because I'm not seeing him in his lineup, and there's no way he benched him. Nah, seems like he likes the name. He doesn't even have Tua. He just likes the name. See, you don't always have to have a fantasy name that represents the players that are on your team, but he did have Patrick Mahomes, and that was a big difference maker on what helped carry him to a victory this week. Austin Eckler continues to struggle. Tyler Lockett did not have his best day. Curtis Samuel, nope. Sam Laporta, pretty solid for a tight end. Zach Ertz, unfortunate bad day for Shelby and goes to IR. She'll be in the marketplace for a tight end, but Cooper Kupp only getting 5.9 points. But Puka Nacua, we haven't talked about him yet. I'm sure we'll talk about him in a second. On some of these teams, James Cook put up 7 points this past week. That's exciting to see, but there is rumors that the Buffalo Bills may be in the market for a running back. So we'll see how much longer his standing has, you hate to trade players based on rumors, but you might want to start throwing him in some deals just in case. And the Cleveland Browns put up 14 points, the Ravens 15, so pretty even wash there. So it really looks like Patrick Mahomes was the big difference maker in this matchup, and that's why he's typically the first or second quarterback drafted, because he can do that some weeks. Got to tap it off to the best quarterback in the league. Matchup 3 in Group B is between Sheeler and Hayden. Hayden gets the victory, 121.56 to 98.64. Scrolling down here, Tua, his disappointing performance on Sunday Night Football, only putting up 10.3. Come to expect that. Taking the loss, even with the wherewithal to start Deontay Foreman, 31 points. That just goes to show how rough it was for the rest of his lineup between Josh Jacobs, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Evan Ingram, Devonta Smith, all scored less than 10. Cortland Sutton did get 16 points thanks to a touchdown. So didn't quite break that 100 barrier. And yeah, the Chiefs defense or the 49ers defense might have helped, but who saw the 49ers getting upset for the second week in a row, especially to the Minnesota Vikings? Maybe there's something going on in San Francisco and they're not that team. Will have to wait. I'll debate that with the guys later in the week. Trevor Lawrence had a nice day at 18 points. Saquon, pretty much the only part of the Giants offense he found his way into the end zone. So they were able to score twice, which that's 2 more times than they have most of the season on offense, at least. DeAndre Swift had a rough day, but Jordan Addison, another guy, breakout. I know in another league I was in, I was trying to trade for Jordan Addison last week. It couldn't pull a deal, and I wish I would have just anteed up and gave a little bit more after the performance he did, especially with Justin Jefferson on IR. So that's the third matchup in this. Let's go to Marcus, as I mentioned, the highest scorer. He put up 145 points to 85.26 as a straight beatdown on Aaron and radioactive DK. And surprise, surprise, we'll start Aaron. Only putting up 85 points, not a great performance here. He did get Dallas Goedert and his touchdown at the tight end, so that's a plus, but he still got outscored by his tight end, Travis Kelce and Marcus, by 13 points when he put up 29 points. Puka Nacua had 154 receiving yards, so 19.4 points without scoring a touchdown. That's a big day. Jalen Hurts found his, couple touchdowns, looked like good. Jerome Ford started off the game with that big touchdown run. He did leave the game injured. Not 100% sure if he's going to hit IR, if he'll just be out a couple weeks. Have to wait and see on that one. So Marcus puts up 145 points. The good news is for out there, he didn't have too many points on his bench. He could have threw Jacoby Myers in a flex spot over Brian Robinson. Got a couple extra points. Could have broke the 150 barrier. But when he's put up 145, you're not stressing. And if you look here, Aaron, the good news is hopefully he is mainly through the bye. I mean, he had Adam Thielen, top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football this year. That's crazy to say, but it's true. Derek Henry, Miles Sanders, CeeDee Lamb, Schubert Hubbard, all on bye this week. So really drew the short straw, but hopefully those guys come back and start a comeback for him. And the last matchup is Bree as she continues her winning ways with a 115.28 victory over Josh Najee and the Jets, 87.26. And a big Lamar Jackson, 33 points, 4 total touchdowns on the day. We talked about him in Group A. Surprise, Tyreek Hill continues to just dominate and is on impressive paces. He'll probably break 1,000 yards next week, which is crazy that he's already at that many points. He's on pace for over 2,000. So we'll see if he gets that or if they slow down, or we'll have to wait and see. And looks like Bree is going to ride Lamar, Tyreek Hill. Like, she put up 150 points, is undefeated, and Bijan Robinson put up 3 points, or 0.3. Not, they wish they put up 3.3. So she is definitely a scary team right here. Has George Kittle, T. Higgins on the bench, A-Chain on IR. So Bree's team is definitely a team to watch out as we move forward too. She seems to have some depth. She might want to, try to make one move or two in the trade market if she could go get a star for some of these bench pieces and patch something together. We'll see what comes to fruition in this Group B as we move forward. One last time, if you are on YouTube, I will let you check out the current standings. I am in second place at 5-2. So second place already has a 2-point or a 2-game deficit uh, as we move forward here. So Bree, barring a massive comeback, who appears to be the first, will be the first team, or a not a comeback, but a massive flop or heartbreak. Seems to be the first team to clinch a playoff spot. Not officially, but most of the time you get 7 wins, you'll be able to at least squeak in at as 6th seed. So we'll see if she can get a couple more and lock up a playoff spot early. And she has her eyes on a bye in round 1 of the World Cup playoffs. We got one more group. That's Group C. That is Georgia's division, where he is sitting at 4-3 in the third place behind Snyder, who is 5-2, and my team, Brandon. Congrats, Brandon, on 5-2. You're on a 4-game win streak. So started out 1-2, moved into first place. Now George is the highest scoring team in this league. Looks like about a 50-point difference. So despite being 4-3, had some struggles, but 50 points, high score. Looks like he has himself good up. The next couple teams are 4-3, are Bryn Decent Exposure, Country Road, Take Mahomes, and Maximum Effort to round out the top 6. Then we got 3 and 4 for 7, 8, 9. The Greyhounds, Water Over the Hill, Dutchy 21, Dutchy 21. I apologize. And Cincinnati's own is at 0-7. Again, it is 0-7 is not a death sentence. You can still make the playoffs. You got to do work. You got to attack the waiver wires. You got to get things right. Make some moves, even the trades that you don't think make sense. You got to let go of the players you have and see what you can do. And unfortunately, a lot of your players people might not want. So you might have to throw something in there. And in this league, we're a fab league, so you can throw in fab dollars. And because you can see, like Brandon, he only has $6 left for the rest of the season in fab, where Cincinnati has 100. He might have to throw in 50 or 60 fab dollars to help facilitate a trade if he can't find somebody on the waiver wire. But let's get into those week 6 matchups before we get out of here, where George, he beat Jason and Water Over the Hill 118.94 to 70.64. Let's bring up the box score. AJ Brown, Mark Andrews, we've talked about those guys enough. Saquon Barkley. Ken Walker continues to be just a consistent top-end running back. Not doing too many flashy things, not the guy that's putting up, multiple 20-point games, but consistent. You're going to get a decent output from him. So despite both starting wide receivers getting less than 10 points, Raheem Mostert having less than 6 points, he was still able to get a victory. He did have Gus Edwards on his bench, so he could have got more points along with Rachaad White over Raheem Mostert. But again, why you wouldn't sit Raheem Mostert? No one blames him. And he had some people on bye. And then we're looking at Jason's team here. Jeff Wilson starting him, coming off IR. Did not help. He had 0.9. Zach Evans, the big waiver wire addition last week. And they were like, nope, we are going to sign Darrell Henderson off the street and we're going to start him. And yep, that's exactly what happened. Tyreek Hill continues to ball out, but he also had to start Jalen Waddle. So really deep in that Miami offense with 3 guys in the starting roles. And then the Lions defense against the Baltimore Ravens putting up negative points is never a good day. The next matchup is Jim and the Greyhounds. Takes a loss 109.56 to Cole and Maximum Effort at 119.20. Check out these teams. Jerome Ford helped him. We'll see if he has a replacement when we get down to lower on the bench. Jordan Addison with a big game there. So it does look like, I'm just doing a quick math in my head. It does look like going into Monday night, Jim had a lead, and Jordan Addison outscored George Kittle and the 49ers. I can't confirm that because this is, again, quick math in my head. But that's what it looks like looking at these box scores. And Jordan Addison broke out and had a good game. Dallas Goedert, solid performance on Sunday Night Football. George Pickens continues to be a solid flex wide receiver 2 option for Cole here. Let's check out these bench points, though. Does have Najee Harris on the bench, Tajay Spears, Jonathan Taylor. So he has guys to replace Jonathan Ford. And Jonathan Taylor, despite Zach Moss still seeing 18 carries and Jonathan Taylor having 18 carries. He did a lot more with it, starting to see like he is taking over the backfield. So we'll see how much longer we can play Zach Moss. For comparison, Jonathan Taylor had 19.5 points. Zach Moss had 6.7. So if you can, you might want to try to move on from Zach Moss at this point in the season, but it might be a little too late. The third matchup is Josh versus Mikey B. Josh gets a 119.98 victory to 95.66. Checking the box score, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara. Based on everything we said, that's pretty much gonna would have won you a week most weeks, as those three people alone put up almost 75 points. And when the other team puts up 95 with this whole team, that definitely does help. Now, there is some guys that didn't perform like he had to play Kadarius Toney. We'll see how many people we on by. It would have been interesting. This matchup could have been a lot closer if Bijan Robinson did play a full game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because he is good enough to put up 15 points, which would have been enough to get a victory. So that is a tough break for him. Darren Waller, he played, Darren Waller over Michael Mayer. That was a big misstep here. Some people on bye, so we're good for. Why did I forget the teams? Josh. So Josh continues to be, excuse me, competitive. He was one of the remaining undefeated teams. He did take a couple losses, but he is back in his winning ways, and we'll see how that continues the rest of the season. Brandon, like I mentioned, took over the top spot on his 4-game winning streak, 120.76 over Doug, 89.96. And Travis Kelce, that 179 yards and a touchdown. G Swift was in the stands. He performs. Puka Nacua, almost 20 points without a touchdown. Those guys. So and unfortunately, Doug has Patrick Mahomes based on his name, Country Road, take Mahomes. But he was throwing most of his balls to Travis Kelce. And when the other guy has him, he was able to put up points and kind of counteract the Patrick Mahomes indifference. DK Metcalf was a late scratch, and Doug was unable to pull him out of his lineup. And if you look on his bench, he had a bunch of people buy. Dallas Cowboys on bye decided not to play a defense. That could have hurt him as well. I understand not wanting to cut the Dallas Cowboys, but when I see Chigoziem Okonkwo on your bench on a bye, I don't think he's a guy that people are going to be running out to grab on the waiver wire. Would have loved to see Doug pick up a defense there and see if it would have made a difference. Would it have made a 31-point difference? Probably not. So at the end of the day, no harm, no foul. But you hate to see people leaving open points in their rosters. And the last matchup is Dutchy 21 versus Anthony. And just based on the score, I might start to think Anthony might be giving up. 81.42 to 41 points even. And if it's not, I'm sorry. Nope. Definitely gave up. So it looks like Anthony has decided to punt on the season, which we do not love to see on the Couch GMs podcast. Don't be this person in fantasy football. And if something happened and you're busy this week and you couldn't check your lineup, it happens. But hopefully we don't see this as a trend. Maybe he just punted because he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people on bye. But when I look at his lineup, he could have played, and his bench only scored 32 points. So if he could have did something different, maybe he could have. But unfortunately, it doesn't appear that way. So yeah, hate to see that. Looks like whoever is playing Anthony might get a free victory coming up, and that is not what we were hoping for in the Couch GMs World Cup. But unfortunately, not everybody. Brandon. So Brandon looks like he got an easy 5-point win or a 5-win in a row streak. Could be wrong because fantasy is crazy, and some of those things happen. He does have solid players in his lineup now, and 6 of them are and no buys, so that's a good thing. Actually, I don't think there's any buys this week. I think that was a weird quirk in the schedule. So that is how week 7 ended. I went to my team, which is this is Georgia's team. That's how I'm able to see this is the Couch GMs are running it, and they are an account the Couch GMs account is commissioned with all 3 teams, so we can see all these and do this great podcast for you guys. I think I went a little bit longer than I usually do, and I thought I kept the intro pretty short. As always, thanks for checking out the Couch GMs World Cup recap. We'll be back later in the week talking more fantasy football, helping you guys get ready. Make sure you're checking us out on our social media networks. George's Now TikToks every week, Waiver Wires, football regular season. If you play fantasy football season, fantasy football the right way, music picked up. I thought I had to get out here. I have a couple more seconds. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all later in the week. Oh, I can't find it. There it is.